This is the kind of movie where you go into it, and for just 2 hours and 10 minutes, you're like, "Ah, testosterone!" Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today, our movie in the middle is The Northman. The Northman follows Prince Amleth as he searches for his father's murderer, his own uncle, and vows revenge, death, and the rescue of his captured mother. It stars Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Claes Bang, Anya Taylor-Joy, Ethan Hawke, Bjork, and Willem Dafoe. So this is the newest movie from Robert Eggers, who also did The Lighthouse and The Witch. Those were his kind of directorial debuts, and they were phenomenal. They came out around the same time as Ari Aster had his, and Jordan Peele has his, so these horror directors all came out at the same time. They all kind of had one really first great movie and then a second awesome follow-up, and now they're all into their third, and The Northman is Robert Eggers' third. You know how Quentin Tarantino's movies are kind of like history, but if the good guys won? Robert Eggers' movies are like history, but if we only showed the weird shit. And it's funny because The Witch is more about the supernatural side of things. Obviously, it has the historical aspect to it, but it has a lot of the supernatural, fantasy, creepy elements to it. And then The Lighthouse is just more about
guys being dudes.
But then The Northman kind of combines these two because it is a very, you go in there and it is just a lot of screaming and rage and men, but then it also has this supernatural witch element side to it, funny enough, including Anya Taylor-Joy. So starting off with the highs, you know it, the cinematography. The cinematography was done by Jaron Blaschke. If I pronounced that wrong, I'm very sorry. I think I have it right, though. And it kind of reminded me in spots of Dune and The Green Knight in terms of there's a lot of scenes where the light is coming from one source and there's just mist or fog or smoke all around. So it kind of gives it this whole scene, this whole shot is just one color and it's all diffused and soft, and it was just really beautiful. But those are just one type of the shots. I mean, there's a ton of shots that especially involve natural lighting, and they're just beautiful because especially compared with the locations that they're in, which is just rolling hills and a lot of greens and grays and earth tones, it just made for a really good looking movie. And Robert Eggers always has good looking movies because, you know, obviously with The Witch, he had the more simple gray look to it, but it was very haunting, but kind of bare. And then with The Lighthouse, obviously it was black and white, and then a 1:1 aspect ratio. But this one combines sort of the bleakness with a huge scope. I mean, that's the one I think that is different from the other two, is that this one has a much bigger scope to it. I also thought for the most part the cast was pretty good. It's funny that, you know, with these directors who are doing like, you know, 3 movies, 1:1, and they're all really good, it seems to be this pattern to have a couple actors in the first one, do the second one with new actors, and then in your third one, you kind of take a little bit from each and put them in this one. Think Mike Flanagan with both Hauntings and then Midnight Mass, or Jordan Peele with Get Out and Us, and now he's doing Nope, and he's bringing some of those actors back. It's kind of funny. And I like how Robert Eggers seems to like working with the same people so much that he even put 2 people that were in The Witch in this movie in very small roles. You know, it's one of those things that if you know the actors, you're like, oh, hey, it's that one. But they're not, you know, like shown right in your face. They're not like prevalent in the story. They're kind of background people, but I liked how he put them in anyway. And I really do like the chemistry between Amleth and Olga, who was played by Anya Taylor-Joy. They're kind of this, they're both in a tight spot, so they're going to help each other out. And at first it seemed like their bond was a little too quick, especially considering how they meet. It's not really a spoiler to say that Amleth, after his childhood, goes into being a Viking and he starts raiding villages. And one of the villages that he raised, actually the last one, is Anya Taylor-Joy's. So I feel like she would be a lot more pissed at him. But I think she soon, very quickly comes to realize that, you know, he's not really all that he looks to be, and there's more to him. So I liked their chemistry a lot because they were really starting to help each other out. There is a sort of romance element that I didn't think was really necessary. I would have actually liked if, you know, they were more just allies, but, you know, it still worked, I think. So the story itself, actually, I mean, it's really cool. It's very simplistic compared to the other 2 movies that Robert Eggers has done, but that leaves room for a lot of really suspenseful moments, just being right in the moment with the action, which is really cool. There's especially one scene later on. I don't want to describe what it is because I want it to be a surprise, but it was just really cool. It's one of those just like, holy shit, it's happening, and we're gonna get. The suspense is really great. It reminded me a lot of The Revenant, and I actually thought this in the trailer that it was going to be kind of like The Revenant, and then turns out I was actually kind of right because it does feel very. I mean, being a revenge story, obviously, but it feels like it's kind of not slow, but it's paced really well, and then you finally get to the end, and it's like, here we go. Here's the final. This is what we've been leading up to, the final confrontation. The difference between The Revenant and this actually is that instead of in The Revenant where he chases him all the way to the end, but he never sees him, in this one, Amleth is actually right basically in the same village as his uncle almost the entire time, and he's like slowly tormenting him, which in a very sick, twisted way was kind of cool to watch. And don't worry, for as much more simple as this one is, there are a lot of weird parts. There is a weird amount of shit that goes on in this movie. And I think the difference between the last two and this one is that the weird shit sort of makes sense to the plot most of the time, and it's ancillary to the plot. Whereas in The Lighthouse, the weirdness and the abstractness was the kind of the plot. But in this one, it's a lot more on top of everything else. But you kind of understand where it's all coming from. But, a lot of it's more symbolic. A lot of it is more just how they did things back then. But it is still very weird, and I was kind of here for it. And of course, one last high we have to get, because it's a Robert Eggers movie, we have to get someone looking straight into the camera. And we get a lot of it this time. We get a lot of looking right into the camera. And it's very uncomfortable. And I loved it. So I do have one middle element, and it's kind of like in The Green Knight, when I was talking about this Deus Ex Machina type deal. In this one, there's a lot of exposition, and I mean in terms of like characters literally saying what they're gonna do or how they feel. And it's funny because I was even thinking to myself while I was watching this during some of the aside moments where the characters are directly talking to basically themselves or the audience or objects about how they feel. I was like, man, this feels very Shakespeare, and it kind of made me feel like I was sort of intelligent. And then I realized that this entire thing is supposed to be sort of a spin on Hamlet. So once you have that context, it's a little bit less weird. But before you understand that, it feels very like, wow, we are really writing out this script so that the audience very much understands what's going on. And it can seem sort of distracting or a little weird or lazy at first, but I think it does have some foundation on why it's like that. As for the lows, it really comes down to one or two big ones. Mainly Alexander Skarsgård's character, Amleth, I felt was okay, but I don't think he was fleshed out enough. Like, you obviously have the reasons he's doing what he's doing. It's mostly for revenge, and he's got a lot of conflict with that. And there are a lot of really great back and forths with his character in terms of when he's a Viking, he, is trained to be a bear. He's trained to be like possessed by this bear, and all he is animalistic and aggression. But then, on the prince side of him, he's got a lot more heart, and he's got a lot more emotion for his family and other people that he's met, including Anya Taylor-Joy, and he's got love in his heart. So it was very cool to see that back and forth, and the bear part coming out at certain times, and then the love part coming out at certain times, and I thought that was really great. But it felt like even though I got that, it didn't seem like his character was demonstrating it too well, if that makes any sense. It's better if you've seen the movie to understand what I'm talking about, but I feel like there could have been scenes put in between different sections, because this is split up into chapters. I feel like there were just some scenes that we were missing, like specific ones that I'm like, I would have loved this here to show his transition from this to this. Especially in the beginning, we see the flashback, his father gets murdered, and then we go directly to he's a Viking, and he's not even doing the stuff that he's vowed anymore. He has this like list.
So I walk away from her with this to-do list.
He has this like to-do list that he's given himself. And it was weird because we didn't ever get like a transition of why he just stopped doing this, or what he feels about going back. I don't know. It kind of felt like he was just told to do stuff, and then he was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. I'm doing it now. Kind of going along with that. Just in general, I felt it actually could have been a little longer, it's really weird to say because, most criticism is usually, oh, it was too long. It should have been shorter. It should have had things cut out. But actually, with those scenes and others, I feel like it actually could have been just a little bit longer, and I would have been okay with it because the farther you watch into this movie, the more you realize this is a very straightforward, simple story, which, you know, is saying a lot considering Robert Eggers' other two movies and what this one has in it as well with all the weird stuff. It still is a pretty mainstream, simple story. I just thought that there definitely could have been more in it, especially towards the third act, because it feels like it's very well paced through the first two acts, roughly. And then the third act feels like it's just not a mess, but it's like we just got to finish the script. We got to wrap it up. We got to make it 2 hours and 10 minutes, and we're already at an hour and 55 minutes, so it's just got to go ahead and go. Because, you get to the final confrontation, and you're so excited, and it's just like, man, this sword fight's really good, right? Yeah, I know. Robert Eggers. What? It's over? Like, it was just really quick, and then it just ends. And even his character at the end, it feels like there's a lot of revelation in terms of the revenge side of him, in terms of the love side of him, and why he's doing what he's doing. And then, even for making the decisions that he makes, which I was fine with, it just doesn't feel like the motivations or the feelings that he has behind it are fleshed out well enough. And then, like I said, it just ends. And this is just one last thing. It might be an issue, it might really not, but it bothered me. The whole time, Amleth has this destiny, this fate that's been spelled out for him, specifically the part of you're going to kill your uncle on a river of fire inside this volcano. And he's like, I'm going to kill him in the village. And then he has this moment where he's like, oh, wait, that's right. The prophecy said I'm going to do it there. Okay, yeah, I forgot. I'm going to do it then. And then the next couple scenes, he's like, I'm going to do it here. And I'm like, what? You just... So overall, like I said, I think the consensus is that the Northman is still really awesome, really suspenseful, a lot of scope, a lot of fighting and aggression and tension and suspense, but it is definitely more straightforward than the last two. And, The Witch was pretty straightforward. It was a pretty simple movie. It was definitely very weird, but I think this one looked like it was going to be very, very weird. And the funny thing is, you guys know me, I like a lot of structure, and I don't love the abstract stuff all the time if I don't understand it. But The Lighthouse, I'm actually coming back around to. I want to watch it again, and I think I'm starting to understand it more. So this one, I went in, and I told myself, I was like, you know what? If I don't understand it, I'm just going to enjoy it the first time, and then we'll figure it out. And then by the end, I was like, no, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. So it is definitely a lot simpler, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that we weren't prepared for that from Robert Eggers, and I think there could have been more. It felt very Saint Maud, where they had a big foundation, but there could have been a little bit more delivered. But I still think that it was a really great movie. Very proud to have it on my top 10 most anticipated of the year. I'm going to give The Northman a 3 out of 4. Guys, let me know what you think of The Northman in the comments below, and make sure to like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We are coming up to Geek Week pretty soon, so get excited for that. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.